5:30. Quorum is present, so I will call this meeting of the Plan Commission to order. It is the 24th of January, 2022. And now we will get some information from our technical facilitator.
All right, welcome to our virtual Plan Commission meeting. We're going to cover a few basic items before beginning. If you lose connection at any point during the meeting, you can reconnect by clicking the link or calling the number in your original email. To members and city staff, members, if you are able, please activate your video and keep it on for the duration of the meeting. Staff, if you are able, please activate your video when you are speaking. I, the technical facilitator, will be responsible for muting and unmuting committee members. Use the raise hand feature when you'd like to be recognized to speak, ask questions, or request a roll call vote. During any roll call, all panelists will be unmuted briefly. Staff, click raise hand when you are asked a question. The chair will do their best to call on committee members in the order in which their hands are raised. Lowering your hand will take you out of the queue. To members of the public who have registered to speak, the name you entered in Zoom must match the name you entered in registration. You will remain muted until called upon. The clerk will tell you when your time is up. After speaking, a member of the body may ask you a question. If you need to share documentation with the commission, please send it to the email listed in today's agenda. Chair, the floor is yours.
Thank you. At this time, I will ask for any communications, disclosures, or recusals from any of our members. Please raise your hand. Seeing none, we will move on to public comment. And I believe we have one person for public comment.
We do. Thank you, Jason. We have Chet Hermanson of Boyd Avenue in Madison, registered wishing to speak. Chet?
There is no one by that name in the list currently.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Then we will move on to minutes of our January 10th meeting. Are there any additions or corrections to the minutes? Seeing none, I would ask for a motion to approve. See a motion. Can I get a second? And a second. Commissioner Solheim moved to approve. Alder Lemmer seconded the motion. I will assume unanimous consent unless there's a raised hand to object. Seeing none, the motion passes. We'll next move to the schedule of meetings. Our next Plan Commission meetings are scheduled for February 7th and February 21st. And then hopefully everybody saw that the special meeting dates, the 4 of them for the year, have been chosen. So please make sure you mark those in your calendars. Then we can move on to special items of business, any routine business and new business. If I see anybody have anything, raise your hand.
I think you can move to the consent agenda.
All righty. Thank you. So the consent agenda, it is the custom of the Plan Commission to remove those items from the agenda in which there are staff believes that an application has had sufficient review to warrant approval with all of the conditions placed upon it by various city departments, and on which the applicant accepts those conditions, and there are no individuals who have registered to speak in opposition to them. These items are placed on the consent agenda and that way, and we take them up at the beginning of the meeting, and that way the people that are here to discuss those items can go home or sign off. And so today, those items before us are item number 4 and 5 considered together, and then a referral as well of item number 6. And I will read those into the record now. So items 4 and 5 are being placed on consent. That's item number, Legistar number 68647 and 68198. Item 68647 is creating section 28.022-00530 of the Madison General Ordinances to rezone property located at 511 South Ingersoll Street, 6th Aldermanic District, from TRC 4 to PD, Plan Development, and creating section 28.022-00531 to approve a specific implementation plan. And Legistar 68198, approving a certified survey map of property owned by BJV Olson Properties, LLC, located at 511 South Ingersoll Street, 3rd Lake Ridge Historic District, 6th Aldermanic District. And then item number 6, which is being referred, is Legistar number 68200, 6831 Odana Road, 19th Aldermanic District, consideration of a conditional use in the Commercial Center District for a vehicle access sales and service window, and consideration of a conditional use in the CC District for a major alteration to a planned multi-use site containing more than 40,000 square feet of floor area, and where 25,000 square feet of floor area is designed or intended for retail use, to allow construction of a 1-story restaurant with vehicle access sales and service window. And that item does not have a specified date to come back to us. I will go ahead and open the public hearing on that item and ask for any comments. There are no registrants on those items, I don't believe. And so with that, I will close the public hearing and then ask if there is a motion to approve the consent agenda. All right, Commissioner Fernandez, can I get a second? All right, seconded by Commissioner Solheim. Is there any discussion on these items? Good. All right. I will then assume unanimous approval unless there is a raised hand to object.
Well, I'm not objecting,
Oh,
but I did have a question of staff.
oh, okay. Go ahead.
And this is just to continue my education as a plan commissioner. But there's no return date on this. But is there a predictable UDC meeting date? In other words, is this being indefinitely postponed by that group, or is this a hardship to the applicant that there's no return date on this?
Thank you for the question. Yeah, it looks like Tim has got an answer for us.
Yeah, on this one, the applicant was before the Urban Design Commission. They had sent them away with very specific items that needed to be addressed, which the applicant basically acknowledges that they have to do a redesign on that project. Not a complete redesign, but in order to get through UDC. So unlike a referral where they say, well, we can be back in 1 meeting or 2 meetings, there just isn't a timeline for that. So the project, as far as we know, is still going forward, but they just don't know when they'll be ready to go back to the Urban Design Commission. And so I wouldn't describe it as a hardship, more so than just something that sometimes happens with projects where there's some significant design disagreement. So when the project's ready to come back, it'll go to the Urban Design Commission. We will notice a new public hearing for the Plan Commission, and it'll be back on an agenda. We just don't know exactly which agenda, which is why it's unspecified.
Okay. Yeah, thank you, Tim. So really it's in the hands of the applicant, which is all I wanted to really just confirm.
Correct.
All right. Thank you very much. So I will again assume unanimous approval unless I see a raised hand to object. See no raised hands, the motion passes. We will move on to the regular portion of our agenda, and we will take up item number 2. That is Legistar 68204, approving the preliminary plat of University Research Park Pioneer First Edition replat on property generally addressed as 602 to 1202 Boyer Street, 601 to 1103 Boyer Street, and 8825 Nelson Crossing in the First Aldermanic District. And we will have a brief speaker. Mr. Parks, sorry.
Doing what I was told using the raise hand function.
Yes, perfect.
All right. Yes, thank you, Chair, members of the Plan Commission. Just a brief update. This item was before you at your January 10th meeting and was referred to this meeting to allow for some additional feedback to be provided regarding stormwater management, particularly at the southwesternmost corner of the site. We have heard from Mr. John Horn, who addressed the Plan Commission last time. He shared some information with city staff. Greg Fries has provided him response. We do not have revised conditions of approval in your materials. The staff report that was presented on January 10th is still the report and recommendations of record, including conditions of approval. We have Greg Fries from the City Engineering Division on the call to answer questions that Plan Commission members may have. We understand that Mr. Horn is also registered once again. We also have Kate Smith with the City Attorney's Office available for questions. And so we'd be happy to answer questions, a lot of us, after the public hearing. So thank you.
Thank you, Tim. And with that, I will open the public hearing. And I believe, Heather, you're going to call our speakers up for me.
Sure will. Thank you. So the first speaker is Aaron Over of Rose Road, representing University Research Park and wishing to speak in support. Aaron, you'll have 3 minutes.
Thank you. I am the managing director at University Research Park. I just wanted to provide a little background. We are pursuing this replat really for 2 reasons, primarily. One is to realign a road at the request of the City of Madison, and the other was to make sure that we were providing sufficient stormwater capacity on the plat to be able to implement the city's new 200-year storm standard. Mr. Horn raised an issue about some drainage on his property, which we were not aware of last time. So in the intervening weeks, we've had our stormwater engineer from Smith Group, Dave Wilmot, who I believe is on the call, look into this with city engineering. And I think they can give you the technical aspects of this. But the short answer is into looking into Mr. Horn's issue, it appears that there is a storm sewer serving about 129 acres of the Hawks Landing development that is draining through a culvert and impacting Mr. Horn's property in some cases. So we're happy to cooperate with the city if they need easements to work on our property to address that, or if Hawks Landing or Mr. Horn needs to do work. But I don't think that we have any authority or ability to address the situation. So we'd respectfully ask you to approve the plat. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, our next registrant is John Horn of Nelson Crossing in Verona, not representing any organization and speaking in opposition. John, you'll have 3 minutes.
Greetings. Well, I had sent some materials in and an email on January 17th back and forth with Tim and Greg as Tim Parks and Greg as well. Greg had written me back indicating that a number of things, but the simplest, what it came down to was that he thought that the UW Research Park could grant the city public storm easement in the area so that they can put in the extension that they want to from the 25-acre parcel in traversing into the golf course. Apparently, Greg phrased that the golf course has now agreed to allow that drainage and that culvert to be placed, but we still need an easement from the UW. I think that at least the city, then at least the sewer and water would agree with that. I think that's a fine idea, and I was in favor of it. So if the commission wouldn't mind, what I'd like to do is add that as a condition to the acceptance and approval this evening. It's really that simple. And the UW just expressed their interest in cooperating with an easement as well. So why shouldn't that just be part of the approval process here this evening if we're all in agreement? I'll reserve the rest of my time for any replies or information that you'd like or any questions you want me to answer.
Thank you.
Okay, and then also registered are Paul Mensch, representing University Research Park and not wishing to speak, available to answer questions. Also David Woolmott of East Mifflin Street, representing University Research Park, available to answer questions.
All right. Does anybody have any questions for any of the registrants? Seeing none, I will close the public hearing. Are there any questions of staff? All right. Alder Heck.
Thank you. I would like to hear from Greg Fries, I guess, about the easement issue and whether he believes that's appropriate. Maybe Tim Parks or Kate Smith from the city attorney's office have some input too, but I'll let you guys fight it out as to who's going to speak.
All right.
This is Greg Fries from City Engineering. Hi, everyone. Excuse me. Hi, everyone. So let me just go first on the engineering part of this. So my response to everyone when I got notified of this Tuesday morning after your last meeting is that we do have a new agreement with the golf course in place to allow us to enter their property and do work like this that we did not have I think it would probably be several years ago when I was first contacted with regard to this problem. My comment to the UW Research Park staff was that it would be easier for me to do the work if they would grant me a temporary easement to get onto what is going to be conservation property, I believe is how they are having that outlot zoned. Just so I can do it without that, but it would be easier if they would grant me a temporary easement to do the work. So that's what I have asked for, and I believe I heard the UW say tonight, and I had seen that in other correspondence that they did not object to that request.
And is it, in your opinion, that doesn't need to be a condition of approval? Is that what you're saying?
So we would typically, as part of the resolution that approves a plat like this, we typically have language in there that allows the city engineer to accept and release easements as needed during the platting process. We put that in probably a decade ago to try and, these kind of things happen during the process all the time, right? We find stuff that we forgot during the initial review process. Both the developer and the city happens both ways. So that language exists in the resolution that will eventually go before the council. So we would have that ability, and given that the UW has indicated they would grant it to us, I'm okay either way. If you want to add it, that's okay with me too. I don't think it's, a make or break deal for me, but I guess it's kind of Plan Commission's choice, I guess is what I would say. I think it can get done either way.
Thank you. That was my question.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Fernandez.
Hi, Greg. My first question to you is, how can I get a job where you're working right now?
I don't think you want one. The basement is not nearly as exciting as Logan's pass that I have in his background, Tony. But it's nice to see you.
All right, good to see you too. I was hoping you were up in Logan's Pass actually, doing this remotely. My question really is, is there a timeline for the engineering division to do this work? And if so, would it be assessed to Hawks Landing? As I did a little research on this issue, it looks to me like, yeah, there's a problem, but it sure seems to me that it was not the creation of URP. Maybe the storm sewer, it's more than a culvert, right? If I understand, the storm sewer goes directly down to that point where the culvert is and discharges onto Mr. Horn's property. Is there a timeline for repairing this, and who would bear the cost of that?
So a couple of things. I can't remember who was the speaker from the UW, but that was slightly incorrect. There is a large public storm sewer that comes down what is essentially the cart path for the golf course, and then at the bottom of the hill turns and discharges. But the big pipe discharges, I think about somewhere between a lot and a half and 2 lots to the east of Mr. Horn's property. So that's not to say that in an overflow situation, when our pipe is at capacity, water doesn't reach Mr. Horn's lot. But the general discharge of our pipe is to the east of his property and onto the golf course. There's a culvert underneath the cart path that is separate from our storm sewer system, okay? And that discharges a draw that comes from the conservation lot that is the subject of discussion here tonight, and discharges just directly underneath that cart path. And then the swale runs from west to east through Mr. Horn's property and a little bit on the golf course, and then re-enters the golf course somewhere on Mr. Horn's neighborhood property, and then joins with the swale that is at the end of our pipe, a lot or a lot and a half further to the east. And then they're all together from there as the water heads east and joins the joins the pond that is, I don't know, must be about 500 feet to the east. So in terms of let me see. So that's how the system works. So it is this, at least from my knowledge, there has been really no grading on this conservation lot or changes in drainage pattern that I'm aware of to the west of the cart path in what I will call recent memory. That lot has basically been unchanged to my knowledge. The cart path was put in by Hawks Landing circa 1999, 2000. I assume, it's pretty good, I don't know this, but I assume that the culvert under the cart path was installed by the golf course at the time of construction. The swale that runs in Mr. Van Horn's property, again, I cannot say for sure who installed that, whether it was done with grading with the golf course, whether it was done in grading with Mr. Van Horn's home. I don't have answers to those questions. I can simply say that the swale exists and it takes this drainage. So in terms of engineering crews would do this work, we would basically take the culvert that goes underneath the path and we would connect it into our storm sewer down that now discharges to the east of the property and onto the golf course. The swale would still function in an overflow situation. Our pipe is somewhat undersized out here, so small storms would no longer go this way. But when that pipe reaches capacity, the public water goes this way as well, right? The water runs down the cart path and hits the natural grading pattern that is down at the bottom of the hill, and it would still utilize that swale. But most routine events would now bypass his backyard. And we would do this with operations crews, Tony. So there would be no assessments to anybody for this work. It's relatively minor work. The primary difficulty in doing the work was that we did not have an agreement with Hawks Landing Golf Course that would really let us enter the property. We reached a new agreement with the golf course maybe a year and a half ago, after about a year of negotiations with them, and a new agreement was recorded to replace the one that was put in place in '99, something of that nature. Does that answer all your questions?
It does, Greg, quite well. Would I be correct if I summarized this and I said that the problem was not at all of URP's creation? That the cart path was put in, the culvert was put in probably by the golf course. The location of that culvert discharging to Mr. Horn's property was done by them, and really, Research Park is neither responsible for creating the problem nor fixing it. Is that a fair solution? And that their offer of easements is actually kind of goodwill?
That would certainly be my assessment of this, Tony. Yes.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Commissioner, does that end all your questions?
It does, thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions of staff? All right. I guess at this time then, I would be looking for a motion. All right, Commissioner Solheim.
Sorry. All right. Sorry, I'm just finding my highlighted section here.
No problem.
I move that the Plan Commission forward the revised preliminary plat and final plat of University Research Park Pioneer First Edition replat to the council with a recommendation of approval subject to the conditions in the staff report.
Thank you. Can I get a second? Seconded by Commissioner Fernandez. Commissioner Solheim, do you wish to speak to your motion?
Yes, I would just add that it didn't seem to me that it was necessary to add a new condition to the report. I think the staff report allows for easements, as was brought up during the questions, and also as it was indicated that University Research Park is open to that, even though it was likely not, again, their fault that this was designed and constructed as such. And I see Tim's raised hand, so I don't know if he wants to clarify something before we.
Definitely. Tim?
Yeah, I do. I believe in your motion, Nicole, you said preliminary and final, and I just wanted to clarify that this is just a preliminary at this point in time. The final plat will come back to the Plan Commission separately. Okay, I just wanted to clarify
Amend my motion to preliminary plat only. Thank you, Tim.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. All right. If there's no further discussion, then we will come to a vote, and I will assume unanimous approval unless I see a raised hand. No raised hand, the motion passes. Thank you. We will move on to item 3 on the agenda, Legistar item number 68639, creating section 28.022-00524 of the Madison General Ordinances to change the zoning of property located at 1017 North Sherman Avenue, 12th Aldermanic District from IG Industrial General District to CCT Commercial Corridor Transitional District. And we will have a presentation by staff. Mr. Parks, I believe that is you.
Yes, thank you again, Chair, members of the Plan Commission. The item before you, 68639, is a request to rezone approximately 15,120 square feet of property at the rear of 1017 North Sherman Avenue from IG to CCT to join or to give the property one zoning. It's currently split zoned. The applicant is requesting the rezoning in anticipation of a renovation of the existing building on the property, which is a one-story, 3,500 square foot commercial building that they may construct in addition to, and that as part of a renovation may add a dwelling unit. Right now, by virtue of a lot line adjustment that was done last year, that added the 15,000 plus square feet to the rear of the property. The property has IG zoning where the adjacent former Hartmeyer parcel is zoned IG. The acquired land similarly is zoned IG. The front parcel, or the front of the parcel where the existing building is located, is currently zoned CCT, and the request would provide CCT zoning for the entirety of the 21,192 square foot parcel. So the request before the Plan Commission is to change the rear of the property from IG to CCT. To clarify the record, the applicant is not seeking to change a wetland zoning overlay that affects a small portion of the property at its southeastern corner. And I would refer the Plan Commission to the locator maps that were dated January 24th, which include the area of the property that's impacted by that wetland zoning overlay. There's a specific process in the zoning code for changing wetland zoning overlays. The applicant has not requested that. We have not processed a request to that effect, which includes involving review by the Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources. None of that is on the table. The only request before the Plan Commission is the zoning change from IG to CCT to provide cohesive or consistent CCT zoning for the entire roughly half-acre parcel. The property is of note located within the Oscar Mayer Special Area Plan planning area. The Oscar Mayer Plan was adopted in July 2020 and recommends the portion of the property fronting onto North Sherman Avenue for neighborhood mixed use. It recommends that the rear portion of the property currently zoned IG for park and open space uses, reflecting a desire in that planning effort to preserve most of the Hartmeyer parcel as open space. In reviewing the request to rezone, staff believes that the Plan Commission could recommend either way on this one, to be honest. While the rear portion of the property is zoned IG and it is recommended for park and open space uses in the plan, the boundaries in neighborhood and other special area plans, such as the Oscar Mayer Special Area Plan, are not zoning boundaries. They can, I don't want to say that they're fungible, but they're not statutory. So there is some flexibility understood in where one of those boundaries is shown in a plan versus how it's zoned. The Plan Commission is tasked with reviewing zoning map amendments and finding that they are consistent with adopted plans, and state statute provides divine guidance to us that consistent with means not inconsistent with an adopted plan. So staff believes that it would be possible for the Plan Commission to find that adding the rear portion of the property to the CCT district would not be inconsistent with the plan recommendations, given the existing zoning that exists on the street frontage and the neighborhood mixed use recommendation for that in the Oscar Mayer plan. The comprehensive plan also recommends mixed use for the frontage. So we don't believe that zoning the 15,000 plus square feet would be inconsistent with plan recommendations, but neither would it be completely consistent, given that there is clear and stated intent for there to be park and open space on most of the parcel, well, all of the property that's subject to the rezoning and the property adjacent. So, things that the Plan Commission should consider are the consistency with the plan. While the rezoning would reduce the area available for future park use, it would not be completely inconsistent to increase the zoning of the property, zone CCT, given that the frontage is recommended for mixed use. I'd be happy to answer questions after the public hearing. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Parks. And with that, I will open the public hearing. And Heather, you'll read those names into the meeting, into the minute.
Yes, thank you. We'll start with a couple registrants from the applicant team, and we do have several others as well. Starting with Steve Schulfer of Elmwood Avenue in Middleton, representing the owner, XX1 LLC, speaking in support. Steve, you'll have 3 minutes.
Hello, I'm Steve Schulfer with Sketchworks Architecture. We are working with the owners, Ryan Suter and Justin Suter, on this property. And last year they purchased this building previously owned by Fox Water. The building's in desperate need of repair, inside and out. And so plans have been submitted and approved to conduct that remodeling. In the context of remodeling this building, they've noted that they would like to do two things. First of all, they would like to get a single residential tenant apartment unit into this building. And they also have a need to expand the building by about 2,000 square feet. That constitutes demolishing a small garage on the back of the property as well. So this new addition presumably would fit in the same footprint. The use of the building is truly a mixed use commercial use. Mixed use. It's a commercial tenant for retail or perhaps professional or maybe some sort of health services salon or otherwise. It also has a need for their own property management business. And so they'd like to put in an office, some storage space for their equipment, and then again, the apartment unit for their property manager. So as we submitted plans back in October for this, we were seeking to rezone the back of the property to make it all consistent with the CCT zoning and thus allow that single residential unit to be applied. It's recently come to our attention that there's been concern over the neighboring wetland, and so we did have a neighborhood meeting, and we do wish to work with the neighborhood. Suitors have told me as recently as a few hours ago that they'll happily reach out again and look at revising our plans to accommodate their needs. But I think the first step that we're really seeking tonight is simply a rezoning to make this entire parcel consistent with the CCT district. So that would be our request. Yeah, appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next registrant is Charles McCall of Rutan Drive in Spring Green, Wisconsin, representing Sketchworks Architecture. Charles, you'll have 3 minutes.
Charles, you should have a prompt to unmute yourself.
There. Let's try that. Thank you very much for giving us a chance and opportunity to speak tonight. As Steve said, he kind of gave the overview of the project here, and I just want to go back to the beginning of the project. At the beginning, the team here at Sketchworks, we look at the local zoning and regulations that we must adhere to on our design projects. When reviewing the site documents for the property at 1017 North Sherman Ave, we're made aware that it was zoned CCT, as we've discussed already, and that the Roth Street lot was zoned IG. For the sake of continuity and the best interest of our client, we wish to have the entire parcel zoned under commercial corridor transitional. Ultimately, that's what we're here to discuss. Just like the last meeting we had with the neighborhood, we realized things have changed. Things were brought to our attention. And as Steve mentioned, just as soon as, or recently as a few hours ago, the suitors have talked about altering the plan here, listening and working with the neighborhood. And tonight, our main goal is just to get it zoned the CCT. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
All right, our next registrant, I understand that Chet Hermanson, who had registered for public comment, is here. And I want to give Chet an opportunity in case this was the item that Chet was interested in. Of Boyd Avenue, opposed and wishing to speak. Chet, you'd have 3 minutes.
You should have a prompt to unmute. Chet, you have to unmute yourself. I cannot unmute you. Doesn't seem to be responding.
Okay, let's move to the next registrant, and we will come back and try this again. Next registrant is Paul Noldner of Kensington in Maple Bluff. Opposed, wishing to speak. Paul, you'd have 3 minutes.
Yeah, thank you, Plan Commission, for examining these issues and working to be consistent with the OMSAP plan. And thank you to the suitors and the developers for a very refreshing meeting the other day, and your willingness to think about alternatives that would avoid impacting the wetland if possible. So I'm going to right up front say, please vote no to the alders, because I think that changing it from IGW to CTT on that area permanently removes the proposed CN that was actually in the OMSAP plan for that area. And while part of that probably logically makes sense over by the Esquire Club, the part that's low and back there for the proposed addition is right next to the wetland. There's no wetland. It's right on the wetland boundary, literally water. I've sent pictures, water on the lot, and I know it's unfortunate for the Sooners in this way, but I encourage them to build on the existing footprint and build up, not out, and avoid being flooded. And in turn, that'll avoid impacting the wetland in a negative way. So the CCT rezoning wouldn't be needed then, and probably shouldn't be done there. And so that's why I'm encouraging voting no. It would be lovely to have a nice building there and a rental unit looking out at that beautiful area. This is a historical wetland remnant with lots of quality, actually, and sandhills, denning fox, other mammals. I was just over there looking at the fox dens. I talked to somebody who goes there regularly because they love looking at urban nature, who happened to pull up while I was by the dental clinic. I'm going to bounce right along here very quickly. Wetland water quality is a big issue. It's kind of like we all love baseball. Rule one is don't wreck the ball field. We almost take it for granted that we don't wreck the ball field. We love to sit in those bleachers. We'd love to have bleachers with real good seats around the world that we live in, and nature is often the appealing part of that, but we don't put the bleachers right on the first baseline. So here, I think we should vote to uphold the intent not only of the OMSAP plan, which is item 3 is, priority 3 is preserve open areas and wetlands in our water. That should be a goal here. So I think a no vote would do that. And I think there's a way to accommodate the plans and make it work without doing that. The other item is trying to uphold the intent as well as the letter of wetland protection. We're in a time of climate change. That water level is going to keep going up. And I hope the suitors don't want flooding, and we certainly don't want flooding in there or runoff into the wetland from that. So there's some things that could possibly be done. So I will just leave it on that. I would say vote no and ask the developer to address this issue. See if they could work with the partner next door, with the Kavanaughs, or on their existing lot where that entry lane goes down right to the level of the wetland, and instead fill that whole lot with a really nice building with first floor access for their equipment and storage.
All that's your available time.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. The next registrant is David Bierman of Nova Way, opposed. And David, you'll have 3 minutes.
There's no one by that name in the list.
Okay, thank you. We'll move to Christine L. Holm of Melrose Street. Christine, you'll have 3 minutes.
Everyone, I would like to keep it simple. I would like to say that the Hartmeyer Natural Area Wetland is located in the Sherman neighborhood, but that doesn't in any way mean that we own it. This natural space is meant for all of us in Madison to respect, preserve, and protect. That includes members of the Planning Commission, as well as the developers who are the Suter family. I'm a layperson who believes in science, and I know climate change is real. As conscientious citizens, we must do everything we can to protect what we have in our natural environment. You may say honoring the Suter's request to rezone would not harm the wetland. And you may also say it's too small a parcel to really be concerned about. But that would set a precedent, as it would mean chipping away at the 16 acres of wetland our city council recognized and agreed to preserve in OMSAT. To me, approving the rezoning request could lead to the beginning of the end of the wetland, and I don't think that's a risk worth taking by any of us. If you haven't already done so, I invite you, Plan Commission members, to the north side to see this natural area for yourself. And you'll immediately know why a conservancy district could be the most appropriate designation for that area. I encourage you to keep your words spelled out in the approved Oscar Mayer Special Area Plan. I want to believe I live in a city that does keep its word. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next registrant is Jennifer Argelander of Erie Court. Opposed? Jennifer, you'll have 3 minutes.
Did I unmute? Yes.
Yes.
Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak. And I really appreciated our earlier meeting that we had with Suter and the architects. So I am not speaking as the co-chair of the neighborhood association, but my own personal opinion. And I just want to say I'm opposing this rezoning from IG to CCT. Instead, I would like us to think differently, and I am hoping the Plan Commission would consider rezoning this subject parcel and all the 16 acres that were recommended as green and open space in the Oscar Mayer plan to Conservancy Natural District with a wetland overlay. This change would then preserve the entire wetland area on the site in its natural state. This whole thing has been a hard-fought issue where we in the neighborhood wanted to protect this urban wetland. The Common Council voted to approve it, and that included the 16 acres to be preserved as wetlands. And in April 2021, the Plan Commission voted to recommend that the green space outlined in the Oscar Mayer plan be designated as a Conservancy Natural Area. The Hartmeyer wetland is a precious urban resource, and it is included in the Wisconsin Wetland Inventory, and the city has put it into a wetland overlay district. So my question is, how can the city honor its commitment to protect this wetland? And my suggestion would be that we would rezone it all, the 16 acres, including the subject parcel, as Conservancy Natural Area. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next registrant is Beth Sluis of Nova Way. Opposed? And Beth, you'll have 3 minutes.
2 Beths in the list, so we'll try both of them.
Good evening. Liddell Zeller once said, "Our plans should matter." I believe they do. This split zone parcel is a combination of 2 parcels with different histories and supposedly different futures. One parcel is the building already zoned CCT in need of renovation, which could have already been underway. The other parcel is a piece of the Hartmeyer land slated for green and open space. I'm not sure how we even got here. Staff knows this parcel is in the land use map for green space. The licensed architect surely knows to check area plans and zoning districts and land use maps. The 1017 parcel CCT plans show there's already an apartment plan for within that building. So it sounds like there might be 2 apartments being planned. The plan sits in a delineated wetland. The 2,000 square foot addition does not work in the overlay district, which applies whether it's CCT or IG. This area already sits in the high water mark, very often with water up to the building with ducks swimming by. The addition sits within the delineation recommended setback. The IGW parcel is shown as green and open space in the Oscar Mayer plan. In 2020, we adopted the Oscar Mayer Special Area Plan. It is the result of a massive effort of city leaders, staff, and thousands of hours of community members' time to save the 30-acre parcel currently zoned IGW, which is the exact zoning for the parcel at 2007 Roth. Together, we decided that 16 acres will be dedicated for green space to protect the wetland and to support the Sherman neighborhood in offering a safe and welcoming public green space for its diverse community members in the heart of their neighborhood. Our council decided to protect the 16 acres. Less than a year ago, this very commission recommended this land be zoned for green space. This reemerging wetland was left undisturbed for several years, and as a result, amazing biodiversity was observed. We saw the magical beauty of over 143 semi-rare orchids, rare milkweed plants, 120 bird species. This is an amazing parcel of land. This wetland ecosystem collects a large area of surface water runoff and does what wetlands do best: purify, drain, and manage rainwater. We are lucky to have it. In addition, this land was once home to indigenous people and a known burial site area. As we look to conserve the 16 acres, so too can we look to conserving an unsurveyed archaeological area within its borders. We owe this to our Ho-Chunk neighbors. We took the first step at Bascom Hall, witnessed the discovery of an ancient canoe in Lake Mendota, and so too need to do the discovery in this area as well. Allowing for the split lot parcel to be built out into the wetland area is bad policy. It ignores city, county, and state works on reducing climate change, ignores public safety in a flood zone. This begins the slippery slope of reducing protections on our natural and cultural resources. This rezone effort ignores our conservation commitment. Please vote no. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next registrant is Marcia Cannon of Cherokee Circle. Marcia, you'll have 3 minutes.
Well, it's all been said already. And I think the Sherman neighborhood residents have a firm commitment to this land. I live on the other end of Sherman by Cherokee Marsh. And I can tell you, having a resource like this close by makes all the difference in how young people learn to appreciate nature, to have it in your backyard. And the idea of preserving the wetland and natural open space as a gateway to the north side makes an incredibly good suggestion. I urge you not to rezone this, but to preserve the land as indicated in the 3 plans that mention conservation of natural resources. I think the planning staff actually gave you the opportunity to do the right thing. There was not a firm instruction one way or the other, as Mr. Parks indicated when he spoke with you. So I urge you to vote no on this proposal, and let's get it zoned properly for the future. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. We will circle back now to a couple of other registrants who had wished to speak, and I understand they may be available now. First, Chet Hermanson. Let's try again, of Boyd Avenue. Opposed? Chet, you'll have 3 minutes.
Chet, you need to unmute yourself. Again, you should see a prompt to unmute. Yeah, no response.
Hey, I'm sorry, Chet. Let's try David Bierman of Nova Way.
David, I see you're on the phone, *6 to unmute. There you go.
I'd like to ask if you could display the handout that I sent in this morning, Suitor Site Plan Land Surface Elevation Contour, file name. You have that with you there?
1 second. Do we?
I'm sorry, I don't have it. Is that
Suitor
something that was?
Yeah, it was sent in this morning as an exhibit. I can resend it to you if you'd like.
Well, it may be on the Legistar site, which plan commissioners would have access to right now. Staff does not have it handy ready to display via shared screen.
Okay, very good. I'll begin. Urge the Plan Commission to reject the zoning initiative of this parcel to CCT. While the initiative tonight consists of zoning change, the ultimate goal of this action is to add building structure, which will encroach into the adjacent wetland and negatively increase the flood volume area. This initiative is inconsistent with and completely neglects the 2-year joint effort in consensus development and common council enactment of the Oscar Mayer Special Area Plan, which designates this parcel a portion within the 16-acre wetland green space dedicated to be protected by ZN zoning. Action to rezone this parcel moves against committed legislation. The current applicant reveals many regulatory commitments submitted from the future development envisioned. Non-compliance with the land use plan, wetland and water protection plans, and a number of statutes, regulations, and city ordinances are minimized or omitted from the current parcel application. One omission of serious concern for the existing and proposed development of the property is flood hazard mitigation. Please reference the map. The representative drawing indicates land elevation contours based on LIDAR datum of the United States Geological Survey and flood elevations witnessed at the property. The existing and proposed building encroaches within 8 feet of the delineated wetland, and its lower level is well below the Federal Emergency Management Agency floodway elevation of 853. The building has experienced flooding of the lower interior multiple times in the recent past, and parcel development encroachment infill will force floodwater translocation impacting adjacent properties. Parcel water levels are not driven by localized runoff, but are in correlation with Lake Mendota levels, which connects the parcel through hydric soils and existing drainage structures that predate city storm sewers and are not city-owned. Diligent commitment with all wetland and water resource legislation is required to prevent noncompliance, costly mitigation, and to ultimately ensure public safety. FEMA is currently updating their area flood maps, and the Ross Street wetland area will undoubtedly be included due to the physical land elevation and watershed connections. Vote no on rezoning this parcel to CCT. This parcel was rightly slated to be preserved and protection by the CN zoning action of the Plan Commission and Common Council. Deny all future expansion into this wetland and floodway and follow the course as indicated by the legislatively enacted OMSAP plan. Anything less is willful exposure and neglect of adjacent properties and endangerment of public safety that could lead to robust legal challenges and costly litigation upon the city. You will see in the top of that map, there are recorded flood levels of actual witnessed levels over the floor of that existing building. I ask you to vote no on rezoning this parcel to CCT and take action in the future to rezone the entire piece of the OMSAP plan.
Thank you, David. That concludes your available time. And that concludes our list of registered speakers. We have one additional registrant, Joan Bell Call of Esh Lane, who is registered in opposition and available to answer questions, representing the Environmental Nature and Wildlife Group of Next Door.
Thank you, Heather. All right. I will ask if there are any questions of the body for any of the registrants. All right. Alder Heck.
Thank you. I have a question for probably Steve Schulfer, perhaps, and then we'll see what he has to say, whether Charlie McCall needs to speak or not. But Steve, can you, I mean, we've heard references to, conversations between the neighborhood and the property owners, perhaps you all too, even today. It's a little difficult, I guess, for us to understand where those talks are going. You're expressing that the property owner is open to changes, but as you can imagine, it's very difficult for us to understand what those changes might be. Can you shed some light on where you think those discussions might go or not?
Yeah, certainly. So really, I think what we're talking about here are two different topics. We certainly have heard the opposition to the expansion into the eastern part of the parcel, which is undoubtedly getting closer to the wetland area. I do want to let you know that I contacted city engineering in July of last year, and then subsequently the Wisconsin DNR, and neither had taken exception to us expanding this small addition into the area, which is already an asphalt parking lot. So we are not encroaching on the actual wetland, but certainly I can understand the neighborhood's opposition to this. What we're really seeking is just a rezoning tonight, and then go back to the neighborhood and come to amends on what this potential expansion could be. The whole purpose for the rezoning is to get the residential unit in place in some regard. Now, what does that redesign look like? Well, clearly staying away from the wetland in some regard is on the table. I know that the neighborhood itself had made proposals, perhaps building a second building on the site. Tim Parks had expressed that there could be some zoning challenges with that. Admittedly, we've not had time to fully investigate that option. But, certainly I think we are intending to go back and evaluate all the options on the table. But for tonight, what we're really just asking is to make the entire parcel no longer a split zoning and just make it all CCT at this point. And then that would afford us the ability to go back, work with the neighborhood and come up with a design that I think we can all be proud of. I am confident that the suitors are trying to do the right thing here. When we came forward last summer and fall, the intent was really to dress up this deteriorating building and try to make it a viable mixed-use property in the neighborhood. So, all done with the best of intentions. We're just seeking a rezoning tonight, and then we'll go back and try to improve upon the design.
Thanks. That's helpful. Just one other quick question. And when you spoke initially, I think you mentioned that the footprint of the new building that you were thinking about placing in the rear of the current structure was going to be on the same footprint as an existing garage, but in the plans, I see that it's the one that you're thinking about is actually bigger than what's currently there. Isn't that true?
It is bigger. Yes. The expansion would be about a 2,000 square foot expansion, and it does have a larger footprint than the existing garage that's on the property now. The garage would be demolished, and the new two-story storage facility would be located there. I want to address too that I think building up instead of out certainly is a reasonable consideration. However, with the equipment, we're talking about skid steers, trailers, pallet racking, a number of things that just are not viable to put on a second floor. So, if that were a reasonable solution, I think we would certainly consider it. But there is a very low clearance on the existing basement now, and that's ultimately why the expansion was proposed.
Okay, thank you. Those are my questions.
Thank you. Commissioner Fernandez.
Yeah, thank you. This is also a question for the architects or the development staff. Initially, I had two questions, but why is this additional parcel necessary for the redevelopment of the parcel that's already zoned CCT? In other words, what is there something that's integral about this addition being where it is that would make the other rehab or reconstruction unfeasible without it?
Well, the reason that it was proposed off the east end of the building is you look at the site plan, you'll notice there is an existing driveway that continues from Sherman Avenue and around the property, ultimately out to Roth Street. Our intention was to preserve that driveway and not build north, but rather build east to allow them to circulate through the site. And then ultimately have some turning space to back in trailers, that sort of thing.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. And can I ask one more question? Probably Beth, I didn't catch her last name, who was in opposition. Beth Schlies?
Yeah, my last name is pronounced Slies, like guys and buys. Just the record from now on. Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry for clearing
Thank you.
that.
That's okay. I know I've been to many meetings and it's a constant in my life. I'm glad my mom had enough sense to give me a simple first name.
Okay. So we'll go with that. My question is, does the current zoning on this property offer it any different protection? What I'm trying to separate in my mind is the issue of encroaching on the wetland versus the issue of rezoning. Right now, there's a parking lot there, there's industrial zoning. Do either of those things afford it any protection in your understanding? And I'll probably ask the same question of staff.
Yeah, I think the issue is that in good faith, we as a public participated in a long and arduous, and the staff can attest to this, as can the alders, special area planning process. And the Hartmeyer property at that point in time was a solid, almost 30-acre parcel, completely zoned industrial general use in a wetland overlay district. And so when we worked together and came to consensus, we decided on, and God love Alder Rummel at 3 a.m. in the morning, 16 acres of land. And that land abutted up and included this parcel that has now been sold off by Kraft Heinz to the owner. I don't have any particular issue with the existing CCT zoning. The building could go up and not out. But what I do have issue with is that this land was already shown in the land use map that we worked hard for. And I understand it's just a land use map, and city staff always say it's just a plan, but we worked hard, and the commission said yes, and the council said yes. It's adopted in the resolution that this land, whether it's the 30-acre parcel or this little bitty piece that's been chunked off and sold to Mr. Suter, that this land would be eventually green and open space for the community, for the betterment of the community. What that would look like would take place, later on in terms of the design of that park. But my understanding is whether or not this property is zoned industrial general use or CCT, the wetland overlay still applies. And within that, if you're going to build a commercial building, the allowable lot size of that building, as I read it, I'm no zoning expert. I'm just an old lady who lives on the north side, right? But in reading through the municipal code that is publicly available, I understand it that within the wetland overlay, and please correct me, I'm sure you will, is 500 square feet. The existing bump out off that building is about 700 square feet. And this is in a neighborhood. This is not, this is a neighborhood. And so to have that building redeveloped with an apartment on the second story, we're thrilled to see this building redone. Don't get the wrong idea. And we appreciate Mr. Suter telling us that he loves the wetland, he supports the wetland. I appreciate that. But the truth of the matter is, this property sits in the delineated wetland area already. The building area below floods. I've seen people, my husband has seen Fox Water people tronking around in the back there in 6 inches of water or better. The 2018 flood really elevated the surface water in that area significantly. And if you look at that map that is in the Legistar, I'm hoping you've all looked at that my husband completed, it tells you that there's standing water in that building for upwards of months. And so my question is, what can you do behind that building that you couldn't do up on this newly purchased parcel out of the wetland? And we're saying this for the betterment of Mr. Suter. This is a flood area. I mean, this is what that's intended to do. It's intended to collect the surface runoff, absorb it, recharge well number 7, and filter out the impurities. The stormwater in that area runs down Roth Street and down the Hartmeyer straight into Lake Monona, the Yahara River, Lake Monona, unfiltered, full of sediment. This wetland is an important sponge feature for the city, for the north side. And I believe that, no matter what, there's going to be difficulties in whether it's zoned CCT or IG, it still stands within the wetland overlay district. There's no recommended setbacks. There's no regard for the high water mark. The application doesn't even show that it's IGW. And they can say that they're not rezoning the wetland overlay. That's fine. But let's talk about the implications of that in terms of the existing application. Thank you. I hope I answered your question.
Commissioner Fernandez, does that answer your questions?
It did. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Commissioner Solheim.
Thank you. I have a question for Steve, the architect, as well, or perhaps staff if he is not aware. There's been mention of, one parcel's on this and one parcel's on that, but I'm seeing it as all one parcel. And I see the note in the drawings as well that indicate how, the dividing line was lost and it's now one parcel. I'm just wondering if you could give us an idea of timing as to when actually that became one parcel. Was it the new property owner that combined them, or was it prior to acquisition?
I'll be honest, I don't know if it was Ryan that combined them or if they were combined right before Ryan purchased the property. I honestly don't know, but I do believe it happened about a year ago, give or take a few months.
Okay. That's all I have. I'll follow up with staff as well. Thank you, Steve.
All right. Thank you, Commissioner Solheim. Are there any additional questions of any of the registrants? Seeing none, I will close the public hearing and open it up to questions of staff. All right, Commissioner Solheim.
Related to the question I just had, I was wondering if you had detail on when the lots were combined, and then just some background on that process in general. When there's lot combinations, do we typically, rezone something so there's consistent zoning across the site, and it just didn't happen in this case, or does this often happen, I guess, if we have lot combinations?
I can try that one. This was a lot line adjustment between owners of adjacent property, which is allowed under the city's subdivision regulations, kind of by the direction of state statute. It's an exemption that Wisconsin statutes requires that subdivision regulations allow for these lot line adjustments. And so really what is involved is one property owner selling a portion of their property to an adjacent property owner. In Madison's interpretation, it always has to be two distinct properties. So in this case, the applicant, Mr. Suter, and the neighbor, Kraft Heinz, came to an agreement. Kraft Heinz sold 15,126 square feet of their property to Mr. Suter. The provisos for those lot line adjustments are that it doesn't affect formal boundaries like zoning boundaries. It doesn't change the location of any easements that might be concurrent with an existing parcel boundary. And the general rule of thumb is that it has to comply with ordinances and including zoning, and it cannot create a third parcel. So you have to start with two parcels, you have to finish with two parcels. The city doesn't approve lot line adjustments. They are sort of a bit of a loophole. If you want to formally change a property boundary between two properties, you have to do it by some sort of subdivision instrument, typically a certified survey map, where the parties would survey the new boundaries. It would provide through a city approval process a way to assure that there are no zoning issues created by the land division or redivision, that we can deal with easements. We can flag during the approval process that this is crossing a zoning boundary and that you might need to rezone the property. So there's a formal process with ways to identify issues like, crossing a zoning boundary. And then there's this sort of ad hoc lot line adjustment, which allows things to happen a lot more quickly by deed. But what it doesn't do is address things like zoning boundaries that can come up later. So there was a misunderstanding early on by the applicant team. They thought that because they bought the 15,000 plus square feet that the zoning boundary just kind of moved with it. Zoning boundaries only move by legislative action of, in Madison's case, the Common Council, following a public hearing before the Plan Commission like we're having tonight. And so in order to provide CCT zoning for the entire property, they had to submit a legal description of the portion of the parcel that's IG, so that we could formally change the zoning map amendment. And I hope through this long answer I have in some remote way answered your question.
Yes, that was very helpful, Tim. Thank you. That explains how we got to this situation. I feel like I had one other question that I have now. I was wondering if you could, I believe you touched on this at your beginning presentation, but there were some suggestions during the public comment that the expansion area, the proposed additional footprint, was within the wetland overlay. As I'm looking at it, and I believe what you pointed out was that the wetland overlay is just in the corner of that parcel, not near where the building would be expanded. If they were to expand into that area, it would require a lot of additional approvals. Can you just confirm that for me?
Yes, and I'm just pulling up the locator maps that because the wetland overlay became an issue right around the time of the original date of the public hearing for the rezoning on December 13th. We added this to the locator maps to sort of clarify what is being rezoned and how it relates to the wetland. And so you can kind of see on the map that only a very small portion of the southeasternmost corner of the expanded roughly half-acre Suter parcel is within the wetland zoning overlay. So the wetland zoning overlay requirements would only apply to where the green polygon overlays the gray shaded polygon, which is the parcel. So there are no setbacks to a wetland zoning overlay, and the provisions in section 28.103 of the zoning code would only apply to this sort of triangular area at the southeastern corner, which is in the wetland zoning overlay.
Got it. Thank you. That's all I have. Thank you, Tim.
Thank you, Commissioner Solheim. Commissioner Fernandez.
Thank you. Also for Tim, boy, this is really a knotty issue.
Commissioner Fernandez, sorry, it's really hard to hear you right now.
Hear me now?
That's a little better.
A little better? I'll try to talk loud. I've been troubleshooting a little problem with my computer, and sometimes it's okay, and sometimes it's not. What's the verdict right now? Hearable?
Barely, but I think we can make it happen.
Barely. All right. Well, I'll try to speak loud, and if it's really not working, I'll just pass on this question. But the two questions. So you said the city does not have a buffer area on its wetland overlay, but the DNR does. Would the property owner be subject to that DNR buffer area? I mean, in your opinion, is what they're proposing already a non-starter with DNR, or does DNR not have jurisdiction to enforce that over that wetland buffer?
I cannot say with absolute certainty how the DNR would interface with any proposal for this site. It was our understanding, and I would also look to Heather to perhaps chime in as well, but based on a delineation that was done a couple of years ago, that the certified delineator determined that the minimum setback would be required from the wetland due to the degraded condition. And so I believe that that range is somewhere in the 10 to 30 foot buffer or range. The property is not in an environmental corridor, so it wouldn't be subject to the more restrictive 75-foot wetland setback that would apply were it in an environmental corridor per the Dane County Water Quality Plan. So from a city zoning perspective, there is no wetland setback. There may be a DNR setback, but it's fairly modest, and I can't say within within this conversation what role the city would have, if any, in enforcing it, or how the DNR would enforce it.
Okay, thank you, Tim. That was very clear. Can I ask one more question of you? Does the existing zoning provide any higher level of protection for that wetland? I mean, there seems, the debate seems to be if we change the zoning, we're going to change the use, we're going to destroy the wetland. But could a person come in with an industrial, a compliant proposal for an industrial use that occupied the same footprint or encroached just as close to the wetland under industrial zoning? In other words, does the zoning change actually change the protection being offered to the wetland? Does that make sense? Does that question make sense?
Yes. I'll try to give a succinct answer to that. And I'll preface it by saying that the IG zoning district is, if not the most intensive or most permissive zoning district in the city of Madison, it's easily within the top three. And when you look at the uses that are permitted, the relative permissiveness in which they're allowed, it's a very open-ended zoning classification. I think by virtue of the uses that are not allowed in CCT that are allowed in IG, you could make a fair argument that the property might be afforded somewhat more protection in CCT than IG just by dint of the uses that would no longer be allowed on the 15,000 square feet of the property. But I mean, on other levels, it's kind of, apples and apples. In terms of you have zoning that, I mean, if IG is perhaps the most permissive or the most intensive, the least intensive and the most restricted in the zoning code would be the Conservancy District. I want to be very clear that Conservancy zoning is not before the Plan Commission tonight. But, that's the district that affords the greatest degree of protection for any place that you apply it. But in this case, answering your question, Tony, Plan Commission member Fernandez, want to be mindful of titles, pronouns, and everything. That a lot can happen with these 15,000 square feet in the current IG zoning, and without regard for the wetland zoning overlay, because that's going to apply to that corner of the property, no matter whether it's zoned CN, CCT, IG, or what have you, because the wetland zoning overlay applies because there's a wetland. They're not seeking to change that wetland zoning overlay. So really, we're talking about that sort of base zoning. And in this case, we have a base zoning district right now on the area that's the subject of this rezoning that is among the most intense and permissive districts in the code.
Thank you very much, Tim. Very clear. Can I ask one final question? If this were to be rezoned, is that the last stop? I mean, if this were, let's say, not a very good proposal with respect to wetlands and positioning of the building, and we felt that it was bad, but it was not necessarily wrong to rezone it. It was just not a very good proposal. Is there another place where this stops before it becomes? Is the next step a building permit?
It would be. To be very clear, because there were some assertions made during the testimony during the public hearing. The only question that's before the Plan Commission right now, and the only question that the Plan Commission should assume will ever be before it related to this parcel, is the question of whether the 15,000 square feet should be rezoned from IG to CCT. Right now, nothing that's being proposed or discussed is conditional use, which would be a ticket back to the Plan Commission. We know right now that even if the existing Foxwater building was proposed for demolition, that the main and really only question that would be before the Plan Commission in the future, were a demolition permit proposed, would be the demolition use. And so the potential future touch points for this property to come back to the Plan Commission should be assumed to be none. And while we certainly encourage working with neighbors and trying to, do projects that, everybody's in favor of, the Plan Commission's role in bringing that to fruition may be non-existent beyond the zoning map amendment. But I would also caution the Plan Commission that exactly what's being proposed, this is a light touch for the Plan Commission in terms of the ability to apply conditions of approval. The only thing that's been formally put before the Plan Commission is the zoning map amendment. They have some conceptual plans for an addition. They want to renovate the building. They may add a dwelling unit to it. The dwelling unit may go beyond that current zoning boundary into the IG zoning where the dwelling unit would not be permitted. But we don't have fully formed plans, and nor do we necessarily need them to decide the question whether the property should be rezoned, or the portion that's IG should be rezoned to CCT.
Thank you.
That answer all your questions, Commissioner Fernandez?
Sure does.
All right, thank you. Alder Heck.
Thank you. Some of my questions were answered as a result of Commissioner Fernandez's fine questions. Just a follow-on to the last discussion. I realize we're not considering a particular building or proposal at this point, just the zoning, but there was mention in public comment of discussions with you, Tim, about the feasibility of putting a structure on the, let's call it the northern part of the IG parcel. And there were claims that you expressed that there might be some limitations. Can you give us an idea of what those limitations might be? Setbacks, perhaps, or?
Well, and to provide some context, thank you, Alder, for the question. We had a neighborhood discussion about the zoning map amendment last Wednesday night that Alder Abbas convened, and during the discussion, the question was raised, what would be possible on the 15,000 square feet if the property was not rezoned and it remained IG. And I just didn't feel comfortable, given the hypothetical, that, whether it, because there was some discussion, because Mr. Suter, the applicant, made suggested that they might be doing some storage or some warehousing. And the question was asked, can you do storage and warehousing in IG? Yes, from a use perspective, you can do that. But does that mean that, what does the building look like? Where does it sit on the property? There are a lot of things that you'd want to put some asterisks next to, can you do this on a piece of property? Well, yes, but, and, I'm also with the planning division, and not to sound overly bureaucratic, we have a very fine zoning staff that Madison General Ordinances gives the interpretation authority of the zoning code to, not me, Tim Parks from the planning department. I know enough to be dangerous, but not enough to tell somebody or a group at a neighborhood meeting that, X, Y, and Z are possible, based on, some hypotheticals and some assertions during a neighborhood discussion. So I guess I'm providing the same qualification to you that I provided at the neighborhood meeting, and it's not to be obtuse, but just to say that I really didn't feel comfortable, certainly at the neighborhood meeting, dealing in a hypothetical.
Thanks. I appreciate that. But I do have a hypothetical. A new subject. Let's say that a parcel was created to the east of this IG parcel that did not contain the wetland overlay. Couldn't Kraft Heinz sell that to somebody else tomorrow that's currently zoned to IG?
Somebody could use the existing parcel, which I believe is about 29 acres, under the existing IG zoning. They would have to abide by the wetland zoning overlay, where the wetland zoning overlay affects the property. In terms of creating new parcels, that would require a subdivision or a land division to divide the 29 acres. The lot line adjustment is a loophole where you have property owner A and property owner B that want to adjust their common property boundary. For property owner B to just say, I want to create, properties C, D, and E, that would, without a subdivision approval, that would be a violation of our subdivision regulations. And so they would have to go through a subdivision or a land division process to plat or create by certified survey map however many parcels they wanted under the hypothetical, which I would assume would be far enough east on Ross Street to not touch one of the abutting parcels, and therefore, need a subdivision in order to create the parcels in the hypothetical. In which case, the process for subdivisions and land divisions in MGO 16.23 would come into play. There would at least be administrative review of a certified survey map. There might be a full-blown subdivision approval that would come before the Plan Commission, and the Common Council would end up seeing at least a resolution. So there would be more touch points if we were talking about a true division of the Kraft Heinz former Hartmeyer parcel. The virtue of that lot line adjustment is how we get this 15,000 square feet, because you had a suitor parcel to begin with. They approached Kraft Heinz and acquired 15,000 plus square feet using that provision in our ordinances and in state statute, which is how we get to the discussion we're having tonight.
I think I understood all that. It sounds then that, like, perhaps Kraft Heinz could sell the entire Hartmeyer area to someone, but they still would be dealing with the city, perhaps doing proactive zoning and changing it from IG to CN. So and if they did try to subdivide, they're going to run into that also, that the Oscar Mayer plan calls for CN. So that's probably a barrier to anybody doing that.
If somebody came to building inspection tomorrow and wanted to commence a development proposal, while we're kind of in hypotheticals, to construct let's pick a nice round number, 60,000 square foot industrial facility on 2907 Ross Street, which is the address of the Kraft Heinz parcel. They would have basically incumbency to start that process. The fact that we have an adopted plan, actually, as it applies to at least a portion of the Kraft Heinz parcel, two sub-area plans that call for preservation or some or all of it, we have industrial general zoning right now. And if somebody comes and wants to start a process where they're going to develop the property consistent with the IG zoning, and they're not dividing the property, they would be able to do that starting right away. And any change of zoning, and Alder Heck is alluding to proactive zoning map amendments that may be introduced at Common Council as early as next Tuesday's Common Council meeting. That process would not be started in time for someone who wanted to build the hypothetical 60,000 square foot industrial facility with 200 surface parking stalls on 2907 Ross Street, because they will have started that process while it was zoned IG. And as long as they get the necessary approvals and build the project, even if the zoning map changes later, they would be non-conforming, legally non-conforming, and allowed to stay. The only thing that would that zoning or that 60,000 square foot hypothetical industrial project would have to abide by would be the wetland zoning overlay that affects a portion of the property.
Thanks. I appreciate that response, detailed response. And I was thinking about. We heard in public comment that it was a slippery slope type argument that if one domino falls, then the rest of the Hartmeyer area is threatened. So I was interested in hearing that, and I guess in summary, am I correct in that if someone moved incredibly fast right now, perhaps that's true, but otherwise it's probably not true, assuming the zoning changes go through within a couple of months. Is that kind of a good summary?
I mean, I can jump in there and just say that we think that to be true. We can't promise anything. Obviously, property owners will make decisions that they do, but our understanding is that the Hartmeyer property on balance holds much more potential than the hypothetical building that Tim has been crafting an image of in all of our minds. The Oscar Mayer plan calls for a lot of fairly intensive residential development on portions of that property, and includes, importantly, that park aspect that is not yet city owned. But I think it's certainly our hope, because we do care a lot about the plans as they are adopted. Our hope that this is a pretty unique situation on a small portion of the overall picture, and don't really see it as a domino. It's a unique situation where the property grew after the adoption of the plan by 15,000 square feet into a different zoning district. Now that property owner would like to have zoning that's consistent with their front end of their property facing North Sherman. Is it exactly consistent with the adopted plan? No. And Tim did a great job of really laying that out in the beginning. But we don't see it as the first domino to fall either.
Thank you. Those are my questions.
Thank you, Alder Heck. I will ask if there are any commission members having any other questions. All right, and Alder Abbas.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, I would like to have. I have a comment, not a question. If we are at comment portion, then I will speak.
I think we usually have alder comments after a motion has been made. And so if that's okay with you, Alder Abbas, I would like
Sure.
to. Okay, thank you.
That's fine. I respect that. I will wait.
Okay. All right. If there are no other questions of staff, I would be looking for a motion. And all right, Commissioner Solheim.
Great. I will move that the Plan Commission find the standards are met and forward the zoning map amendment, rezoning a portion of 1017 North Sherman Avenue from IG to CCT to the Common Council with a recommendation of approval subject to the conditions in the staff report.
And do we have a second? Alder Heck, seconds. Commissioner Solheim, would you like to speak to your motion?
Just briefly, I think that this is a very unique situation. Certainly, I think this helps to clean up what is an inconsistent situation on this parcel right now. I do think that CCT does offer some better protections per se than the existing IG zoning on a portion of the parcel. It's not impeding with the wetland overlay district. There are additional protections in place if anything were to be proposed for that small portion of area. And, the change itself is on a very small portion of land, although the parcel is 29,000 square feet. The new part is smaller than that. And I think there are, obviously I would feel differently if this was in a different part of that Hartmeyer area, but I think that this change allows for improvement of the property, what is currently a vacant building in need of some work, and overall is a good change.
All right, thank you, Commissioner Solheim. Yes, now we will move to Alder Abbas.
Thank you very much. And first of all, I thank to all of you for your service. It's a very unique situation, and many of you remember we've been through a very long, lengthy process of Oscar Mayer Special Area Plan. And after the Plan Commission recommended that particular land of industrial use was actually drawn as CN and part of the 16-acre land. However, private deal happened, and now the owner want to expand CCT, and I understand where they are coming from, to have a similar code for their whole property. I reach out to the owner after the meeting, and during the meeting, the architecture said, we heard those comments, we really appreciate. The meeting went really well on the both sides. People were not, this is sensitive issue because it's wetland, it's climate change, but people were really open to think very creatively because there is a common goal to improve the building at Sherman Avenue. The building is an eyesore, and everybody is in agreement that could be developed or that could be renovated in a way which provide benefit to the community. With that sentiment in mind, the community provide really creative ideas. How about moving your property, the warehouse you want to develop with housing on the top, behind the Kavanaugh, how about this and that? There was a very robust discussion. The developer said, as well as architect said, we will go on a drawing board and we will get back to you guys. We heard you, and these are all great ideas. I reach out to them and ask them, hey, would you mind, or are you willing to refer this so we can hash out those things? Because if, let's say today, this plan commission approved as CCT, tomorrow, the ordinance, which was approved by the council under the CCT, if they want to develop 4 units, 6 units, they don't need to come to Plan Commission. It's permitted use. They just go to the staff, get recommendation, like from the opinion from the staff, and that is it. So there's no teeth the neighborhood have at that point if this CCT pass as it is. Right now, we do. And that is you. You as a Plan Commission is a policy arm of Common Council. And this is a bigger policy questions. Do we follow our recommended plan, Oscar Mayer Special Area Plan, protected this land at CN, or should we modify it as per cases? And I'm not frustrated, but it's kind of like I would say I'm a little upset is with especially with the developer. Like if they are really sincere in their good faith, and I hope they are, I don't want to judge anyone, this should be referred until we see how that plan look like, and then we can pass a CCT. So community is okay going upwards, 2-story, 3-story, 4-story. Let me tell another thing very quick. So this Foxwater building have a history, and the previous owner of Foxwater, who used to be in Sherman, and then he moved to Packer. I know him personally, and he's my constituent. And I asked him like a couple of years ago that question, hey, why you moved that location, Sherman? And he said the water was continuously getting into my, there is a garage door and there is a warehouse into my warehouse. And the wetland is really expand and contract, and that's a natural phenomenon. If we do not respect the nature, if we keep building things as per how we feel, and we understand there's a housing demand, there's a pressure, it's going to take us in a slippery slope in climate change from point of view. So the recently Yahara watershed study is done, and perhaps you all have that presentation and see that it was at Park Commission, and I sit on a Park Commission as well. In this particular area and other areas, there was a historic evidence how we develop on wetland and how we get here, and why we have water issues and we have other issues. I do think so. It will set a really bad precedent by approving CCT and not really, how I say, not really accepting or respecting our own decisions, which we made, you made, as a planning commission recommended, council made that, and now we are changing it. Also in honesty, and I respect all of you, I get that where the developer is coming, but we are dealing with wetland, and at least with IG, if you leave like this, he can still develop that warehouse behind Kavanaugh building on a high parking lot, which is a higher ground level. It's not an end deal. And I don't understand why this developer is really pushing for CCT. Once this is done, he could simply go and build 22 units or 12 units or whatever, and without any public input, without any neighborhood input, because there is no plan commission. You guys give us that strength to really discuss those disputed issues and find a policy direction. And I'm asking a policy direction for Common Council which protect our wetland, and as well as really listen to neighborhood concerns. And if you all think, well, that CCT is fine, at least at least you can do is to refer this, so we could at least understand what is their new plan. They haven't shared with me. They said during a public meeting right now, and Alder Hector asked that right question, like you mentioned that you connect with neighbors, what are those plans? I don't know who they shared with after that public meeting I had. Not with me. I have no idea. They haven't replied back to my email either. So I want to believe they are doing all this in good faith, but I don't want to give a green slate, or however you say in English, do whatever you want to do here. This need to be really robust and engaged process. So I really appreciate all of you listening to me, and thank you very much for your service on the commission.
Thank you very much, Alder Abbas. With that, is there any further discussion on the motion? Commissioner Fernandez.
Yeah, thank you. This is really one of the more confusing, or at least subtle, issues that I've ever confronted. I just want to say I'm going to vote against this resolution, but with a kind of a heavy heart. I'm not persuaded that the current zoning gives it any more protection. As a zoning issue, I would be fine with it being the more restrictive zoning, actually. But really, what on a policy level, I'm not persuaded that this is a matter of clearing up a zoning inconsistency. It looks to me more like the owner created a zoning inconsistency, an actual intent to extend their zoning onto this other property. It's the tail wagging the dog. The portion that is being rezoned is larger than the portion that has existing zoning. And I guess philosophically, I just don't like the way this is moving. So I guess I'm going to say that even though I totally understand the motion, I do feel like from a policy standpoint, this is not really respectful of the plan that's there. So I just want to say that because I say this with complete respect for anyone who votes for it. I'm torn myself, but I feel like making that statement that this is not the way to proceed with a land land division.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Shepherd. Oh, we cannot hear you. Commissioner Shepherd, we'll try one more time. No, we're not hearing you. Sorry.
You're unmuted in Zoom.
Nope.
So maybe you have a mute on your headset.
All right, can you hear me now?
Very low.
Yeah, very low.
Okay, I will speak up then. Okay.
There we go. That's better.
Outstanding.
All right.
Technology saves the day. A couple issues. One, and some of these have been once again already presented. There is the issue in terms of what's being proposed is not consistent with the Oscar Mayer Special Area Plan. To be clear, the area plan provides a vision, and it says that early on in the plan, page 5, I think, and it repeats that at some points that it's not saying exactly what zoning should be, but it says this is the vision, and the proposed zoning change appears inconsistent with it. Also, and Alder Abbas sort of mentioned these issues, that there still seems to be some uncertainty in terms of, again, some of the wetland issues that have been discussed tonight. I think Mr. Parks did a fantastic job in terms of explaining some of these additional issues. Maybe they could be part of a revised or updated, again, sort of staff report. So those things are actually sort of committed to paper in terms of once again, the regulations in terms of wetlands. And I understand some of those are in there already. Also, maybe additional community input. There seems that there is work being done between the applicant and, once again, folks in the community. Maybe that needs to continue. And also, one thing it would be, and I think Mr. Parks did address this, where he did highlight the difference between sort of what is permissible in the current zoning and what would be permissible, once again, with the new proposed zoning. Maybe that can be part of an updated, if this were to be referred, maybe that could be part of an updated, once again, a staff report. Make it pretty clear. Again, those issues I think are already in the staff report, but really to clarify, what are the additional uses, again, with the proposed zoning. So I think there are still some issues that need to be addressed with this application, this zoning request. Thank you.
Thank you. Alder Heck.
Thank you. This is a tough call. I'm actually still not sure how I'm going to vote. I guess one thing, though, I'd like to say is that if this were to be referred, which is not the motion, or somehow time is given for the neighbors, the community, and the property owner to come to some sort of agreement as to what might be a better solution in terms of a new structure or addition. I don't think that there will be any new information in front of Plan Commission at that point to make our decision, because we're not considering the new building. We're considering the zoning change. And so, the hopes that something better could come out of that process, I don't think really will be should be considered by us when we make our decision about the rezoning. Even though that's our hope that that's what will happen, I do accept the description of the property owners buying the other parcel and having a misunderstanding about the zoning extending into the CCT, sort of magically converting the IG parcel to CCT. I don't think there was anything nefarious going on there, and they're trying to work the system. So I do feel for them in that sense, but I just wanted to make those observations. Thanks.
Thank you, Alder Heck. Commissioner Shepherd, did you have your hand still up? I don't know. Did you put it down? I didn't see if you put it down and then re-raised. Okay. All right. Thank you. Commissioner Spencer.
Okay. Thank you. Just a simple question, and I'm sorry if this was discussed before. My laptop is on its last leg. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Oh, now you seem to be frozen. Oh no. Oh, you're back, Commissioner Spencer.
Sorry, my laptop is on its last leg. I'll get a new one soon, I promise. Just a simple question, I think, and sorry if this was discussed earlier when I had a blip, but so if I'm understanding this right, we vote yes on the rezone tonight, and they can build whatever's allowed to be built under the CCT rezoning. And if we keep it industrial, if they want to build something, I'm assuming something outside of the CCT or outside of the existing zoning, they would have to come to us. They would have to come to the Plan Commission with the buildings, the layout, and everything like that, right?
I don't believe if it's within the IG zoning guidelines, I believe they would be allowed to build whatever would fit. But looks like Heather's got her hand up.
Sure. So today, even though the property is split zoned, two different zoning districts, the property owner does have an opportunity to move forward with anything that's a permitted use in the industrial zoning that's there today. If it is rezoned to CCT, then they would have, a long list of things that they could move forward with that are permitted uses in the CCT zoning district. So in either case, in order for it to come back to the Plan Commission, it would need to meet the threshold of what's a conditional use in either zoning district, whether it's industrial or commercial corridor transitional.
Okay. Does that answer your question, Commissioner Spencer?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other comments on the motion? All right, with that, I will ask for a vote, and I will assume unanimous consent unless I see a raised hand. I see raised hands. I will ask Heather if you can do a roll call vote, please.
I sure will, and I'll call you just based on the order on my screen. Commissioner Fernandez.
No.
Commissioner Spencer.
No.
Commissioner Shepard,
No.
Alder Heck,
Aye.
Commissioner Solheim,
Aye.
Alder Lemmer,
No.
and Alder Alboris.
Aye.
Okay, the motion, 3 ayes, and so that motion does not pass.
Okay.
Is there another motion?
I see 3 hands up. Commissioner Fernandez, do you want to make a motion? Oh, hold on. All right.
No, that was not my intention. My hand was just raised.
Okay, thank you. So we would be looking for another motion. All right, Commissioner Shepard.
Oh, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I move that we refer this application. I don't know exactly how far out. I think staff could give a better idea in terms of if it's the next Plan Commission meeting or something a little farther than that. But I think additional time would be helpful in terms of addressing some of the issues that were brought up tonight, and also allow for additional time for the applicant to meet with the alder, which was an issue that was brought up earlier, and also members of the community.
Okay. Yeah, I think we should look for a second first on the motion and then proceed to get clarification on a future date. All right, looks like Alder Barras, second in the motion. Yes, okay. Yeah. All right, now I'm not sure if I'm doing this in the right order or not exactly, but all right. Can we get some clarification on a future date?
I guess I think the best date would be the next Plan Commission meeting. I'm not certain that will provide ample time, but what it will do is provide clarity, and the applicant can then work with staff and the alder to push that out further if needed and refer to a later date. But I would say at this point, referring it to the February 7th Plan Commission meeting would make some sense.
Okay. All right. I think we can, since the motion didn't have a specified date, maybe you just make that a friendly amendment if I shake my...
Yes.
Yes? Okay.
Yes. Refer to the February 7th meeting. Yep.
Okay. And Commissioner Shepard, would you like to speak to the motion any further?
Not really. I think we've talked about it enough. Again, I think some additional time, additional meetings, and also, again, input from the alder would be very helpful. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Alder Heck, you have your hand raised. Go ahead.
Thank you. I'm going to support this motion, although, as I said in my earlier remarks, I'm skeptical that we're going to have much additional information to change our decision, let's say, or change our votes. I do think maybe it'll be helpful, though, and to have some of the information that Commissioner Shepard mentioned in his remarks earlier, and make sure we all understand how the wetland overlay works and DNR regulations and such. I think that might be helpful, even though I think we've more or less heard most of that tonight, but it might be helpful to organize some of those, that new information. Thanks.
Thank you. All right. Is there any further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, I would call for a vote, and I will assume unanimous consent unless I see a raised hand. Seeing no raised hands, the motion passes. And that will bring us to, I believe, business by members. Is there any business by members? Seeing none, secretary's report.
Thank you, Chair Hagenow. Great job this evening. To start, let's see, the statement of interest forms have all been turned in by plan commissioners. So while that shows up on your agenda, just wanted to let you know that there aren't any outstanding ones from this group. Thank you very much. Let's see, the council at their last meeting did approve the proposed general development plan for the next phase of Hilldale, along with the plat Acacia Ridge replat number 2. And we look forward to the February 7th meeting, where we'll have the item that you just discussed, may be back before the Plan Commission at that time. We'll also have before you the adoption of the Greater Easttown Plan. And so that has been making its way through boards, committees, and commissions, and will be at Plan Commission February 7th. Also, the return of the Ramish Farm plat and rezoning. And that's a very similar, it's the same proposal as you've seen in recent months, late 2021, that will be back before you. And finally, the last one I'll mention is on the far west side, Old Sauk and Pioneer Roads, a new plat for 74 single family lots. And then looking ahead to February 21st, I'll just mention the first two here out on the west side, University Avenue. First, an alteration to amend plans for a 6-story mixed-use building. And then at 3005 University Avenue, the demolition of Smokey's Tavern. And so that will just be the demolition before you at that time, but it's obviously a well-known site. I think I will end it there this evening. Thank you so much. And again, a big thanks to Jason for chairing this evening.
Thank you, everybody. And yes, thank you for making it as easy as possible on me. So, all right. At this time, I'd be looking for a motion to adjourn. Oh, Alder Heck, and seconded by Commissioner Solheim. I will assume unanimous consent unless I see a raised hand. Motion passes. We are adjourned. Thank you, everybody. Have a wonderful evening.